Does it also occur to you that if, as a businessman, you have that huge amount of money tied somewhere, you won't function? But they have always been functioning, going ahead with business. Doesn't that tell you that it means maybe business is truly flourishing without that money given to them?
It is flourishing. It is flourishing because if you ask anybody to go, you know what it is to take a loan from the bank and the huge interest you are going to pay, and somebody is ready to tie down his capital for 6 months. It tells you that it's very, very profitable. So it is the profitability aspect of it that should now be looked at. That is where the institutions of the state, in order to protect you and I, because right now you can't get fuel to buy at 87 Naira. There's no way you get it to buy at 87 Naira. You're lucky if you get for 100 Naira. And then you also have the roadside. Those who will just tell you this is 30 liters. If by the time you calculate the thousands of Naira they're asking you to pay, you're looking at paying almost 200 Naira per liter. So it's for institutions of the state to now look at it. And these marketers, I'm not saying they are all fraudulent. Is for them to now look at these marketers, are they doing the right thing? Because
now you're talking about institutions. DPR comes into question here. If you walk into a petrol station, sometimes you see an armed police officer even keeping watch over that petrol station, and you are told categorically that petrol station is selling per liter 150 Naira. We've actually gone around as a news station to go around and see what obtains in most of these states. And DPR is not acting up. Doesn't that also tell us that something is really wrong somewhere? Because if you don't have the backing, the legal backing to effect any kind of legislation or arrest or closure of any of these petrol stations, it then means that some of these people haven't actually gotten that petroleum product for the approved price.
I think when you say something is wrong, I think it's between you and I. I'll give you an example. I drove into a filling station. I wanted to buy fuel, and they said, I will not pay what was on the pump price. And I said, no, I'm going to pay what is on the pump price. There's been a long queue, and I parked my car. And to my shock and consternation was that it was the fellow motorists who wanted to buy fuel that were on my face and telling me, if you don't want to buy, leave there, you're ready to buy at any amount. You see, one of the beauty of life is that whoever is leading you draws strength from you. If you respect yourself, the person will respect you. If Nigerians decide now that, okay, this is how much we are going to pay. If the filling station is running, if there is fuel in that filling station, this is what we are going to pay. And if there is no fuel, it's a different kettle of fish. But once there's fuel, you have to ask that this is what you are going to pay. If we all agree that this is the way it should go, you'll be surprised that...
So the people also have the responsibility.
Yes, people have responsibility. Because if I ask you, I'll tell you, this is not somebody telling me I was involved in it.
Mr. Esele,
yes.
I can't believe this. I mean,
no!
Are you saying that, you know, your fellow buyers did not realize
I'm telling you...
They did not even remember that this is Mr. Esele of TUC?
No, what I'm telling you is not something that just happened recently. It's not a recent event. It happened in Port Harcourt, outskirts of Port Harcourt.
How many years ago was that?
I was like 3-4 years ago.
Were you TUC president then?
I was TUC president then.
The reason that I'm asking is sometimes if somebody knows that, you know, this person doesn't know what he or she is talking about, in the sense that you know that petrol has been subsidized. Yeah. It's been paid for. The subsidy most likely has been paid for, and you know that we can get at a cheaper rate. You should see that people should show some willingness to find out what exactly the argument's about before they now say, look, if it's not working, get out first, let us buy.
No, but you also have to look at it the other way. Why I also had to look at from what they were saying was like, okay, but I stood my ground. But the fact was that here are guys who have been queuing for days. They've been queuing for days, and they just want anything. You know, you get to a level whereby they've been queuing for days, and then by the time I had to now engage them to say, no, they need to sell. So some of the stories is what I was saying, but I also had to understand what the others were also going through. You can't queue for almost 24 hours, and you are close to, when it gets close to your turn,
somebody's trying to delay.
Yes, somebody's trying to delay you. But what happened was that, okay, I had the opportunity of not queuing like every other person. Yeah, of not queuing like every other person. But what I'm trying to bring out here is that when people have suffered so much pain, and they just want it. There was a time, now PENGASSAN don't do it anymore. There was a time PENGASSAN has its own task force to go around from filling station to make sure that you pay the exact amount. Some of our members were beaten to pulp.
Isn't that what DPR is supposed to be
exactly.
doing?
So when DPR wasn't doing what they were supposed to do, PENGASSAN took it on themselves to say, this is what we have to do. But when those things happen, it just felt, okay, fine.
But the reason why, one would also ask is these marketers too, some of them say that they do go through difficulties. That what government says is not also what happens. That they do go through some difficulty trying to bring in this product to their stations. And when they eventually get to the station, it is unreasonable to sell at the price that government has said sell.
But again, what is there in Nigeria that you don't go through difficulty? We need to tell ourselves the truth. Yes, the marketers do go through difficulties. There are a lot of underhand deals before you also get the product.
Yeah, but where does the subsidy account, right? Where do we have the PEF, all those funds that are paid? Is it not to cover for all this difficulty that they go through?
The next thing you need to ask yourself is that those funds, they actually get to where they are supposed to be. Because it's one thing for somebody to come out and tell you, oh, we've paid X amount of money for PTF, we paid XYZ to this. The marketers know the challenges they are also going through.
But I recall there was a time that the Petroleum, that is the PEF, they said categorically they were not owing anyone, and nobody has come up to say they were owed any amount. And if that is to take off the differentials or the sufferings that they go through, depending on the distance you cover when you take this petroleum product to your destination, I still don't think that the people are getting a fair deal here if DPR wouldn't want to help them out on this.
I think the bottom line is our institutions are weak, very weak. They are more of individuals. And then the other aspect of it, which the marketers don't want to tell you, is that so many things exchange hands. It's not, PEF will pay what they are supposed to pay. That is the official payment. There are the unofficial aspect of this payment that the marketers also go through.
Is it possible to stamp that out?
It is very possible. It is very possible. And how do you do that? Is to ensure that somebody coming in has, whoever is heading, whoever is leading has that moral authority to make sure that, yeah, this has to stop.
I know the marketers say that, if I'm reading through some of their comments, they keep saying it's increasingly difficult for them to bring in petrol to the country. It's getting tougher. Their creditors are on their necks. They want their funds. But the Finance Ministry also says, well, we have this persistent shortfall in gross federally collectible and generated revenue. So who knows? They may not be able to completely pay before May 29. When is May 29? What's today? So who knows? So could it also be that some of them are scared that, look, I'm not sure that this incoming government will listen to our excuse, so we might as well get what we can get now, and then if the new government comes in, we can forfeit the rest if they decide not to pay?
I think that is it. You just answered it yourself, because one thing is very clear is that businessman wants to get as much money they can get. Now, even when you remember the last, we've gone through these circles over and over again. Most times the marketers come, they are owing them XYZ. But at the end, they don't pay the complete amount of XYZ, and marketers are happy at the end of the day. And you start thinking as if they for Christmas or what have you. So the opportunity they have now is that before this government exits, let's collect as much as we can. That is what the marketers call them to order. That is what. How will you call them to order when all your products are imported? How will you call them to order when you really don't? You see, one other thing you must ask yourself: if the marketers now, what you have is more of a monopoly.
Are they trying to force us to remove the fuel subsidy?
I don't know whether that is their line, but would they try to force us to do that? Because the fuel subsidy payment you make they make a whole lot of money from it.
Is that the best way to go?
It is not.
Remove the subsidy.
You see, I would not say that if that is the best way. Is it the same thing?
Remove subsidy or deregulate the sector?
There's a difference between deregulate the sector. When you deregulate the sector is that you want everybody to now play in it, which of course you have Dangote building 400,000 barrels refinery now. So hopefully that comes up in 2017 or 2018. So which very means Dangote refinery is even bigger than the 3 or 4 that NNPC has. So if that comes on, that means that there are other means or sources for us to get product.
I'm just a little curious though. I mean, NEITI over the years has also, talked about this petrol subsidy, the crude sector, what exactly happens. Well, it's supposed to deal with extractive industries, but more often than not, the only time we only get NEITI talking is when it's talking about the petroleum industry. And it's raised concerns more than once. Do you think that it should have also raised concerns when the price of petrol was reduced? Because we do know that quite a number of bodies make up NEITI, and we also know that, you know, PPPRA has a pricing template. When we see that something is not really realistic, even on the altar of political expediency, which is what some people interpreted that to mean, even though some other people thought that the price of crude on the international market had come down, and as such, you know, the price of petroleum products should also see a decline in prices. But it would seem that it wasn't also realistically done in such a way that the country could afford. Do you think that other bodies, you know, should have spoken up at that point in time?
Oh, you mentioned NEITI. I was a board member of NEITI. NEITI deals with the process. NEITI is not really concerned about the end result, because NEITI believes that when the process is right, the end result can be taken for granted. But when the process is wrong, no matter what you do, the end result, you're not going to make any progress. Now, let's look at what we're talking about. NEITI raised concerns that the amount of crude oil that is lifted in Nigeria between NNPC, CBN, FIOS, they cannot reconcile the whole thing. We didn't get same figures. So we have to do several reconciliation to arrive at that. NEITI also is concerned about PPMC. You see, all of these things that are coming up now, NEITI has raised concern about it. But we find it difficult, even those in government, to now sit down and go through NEITI's report. There are several reports, even up to product lifting, kerosene, petrol importation. They are all in NEITI's report.
They shouldn't.
And what NEITI has always been talking about is that the financial system, even in NNPC, NEITI will tell you that it's opaque. It was also in NEITI's report. And they talked about several checks and balances that should be carried out. NEITI has issued over 3 reports from when Obasanjo was there. And the next thing is that, and the law establishing NEITI means that says that NEITI must submit his report to the president and to the National Assembly. So what you would have expected is that when this report comes, those in the National Assembly, those in the executive, sit down with NEITI and say, okay, these are the steps that we should take to mitigate whatever is happening in that sector. But that wasn't done.